In this video, I'm going to go over some of my terrain that I use for my 6mm Crossfire games. I do use the terrain for other things as well, but I had some questions in my most recent video about what models I use, how I do my terrain, and all that sort of thing. So that's what we're going to cover in this video. So first of all, it's kind of boring to look at, but this here is a piece of felt which I bought from a trader online. It's a 2 foot by 2 foot square, or 60 by 60 centimeter square. This sort of thing is pretty easy to get wherever you are, and because I don't have a ton of room for gaming, I actually have multiple colors of this. So I have this green one for sort of European battlefields, I have a desert colored one, and I have a white one for doing my snow games as well. So first thing, if you want to get into gaming, you can play on a 2 foot by 2 foot space absolutely fine. There's ways that you can adapt rules to work on that, and Crossfire doesn't use measuring ranges or anything like that, so it doesn't actually matter what scale you play Crossfire in. So that brings us on to the next little thing to talk about, which is the figures that I use. So Crossfire is written, it's scale agnostic, but generally people play it in 15mm on a 4 foot by 4 foot board, that sort of size. But here you can see I've got 6mm figures. So these are 1/300th scale miniatures from Heroics and Roz, which is a UK based company. They make really nice little miniatures. They're nice and affordable. The other option is to go with someone like GHQ, but GHQ are very expensive, and they're very nice models, don't get me wrong, but I just think that for the scale of the figures, having that much detail sometimes on the armored vehicles is a bit unnecessary. But if you've got the money to spend and you like those models, then absolutely, GHQ are brilliant. I've owned many of them in the past, but Heroics and Rods are where my loyalties lie now. So yeah, so these are on 15 by 15mm bases. These are wooden MDF bases that I bought from War Bases. It's a UK company. They make laser cut bases of all different sizes, but there's no reason you couldn't make your own. So 15 by 15mm bases, 6mm figures. So essentially what I've done with my Crossfire set is halved everything. So rather than playing on a 4 foot by 4 foot, I'm playing on a 2 by 2. Typically Crossfire infantry bases will be 30 by 30. These are 15 by 15. You get the idea. Obviously with tanks and things as well. This is an example of a yet not quite finished Sherman tank from Heroics and Roz. So you can see there, very nice detail. As I say, I haven't finished painting this one yet. It's just had a very basic base cut. I need to go over the green again. But yeah, so you can have multiples of these, and the beauty of playing in this scale is it's nice and cheap. So you can have a platoon of tanks or a troop of tanks on the board, and it costs you less than £5. So yeah, you can play those kind of bigger battles with these. So that's where I get my miniatures from, and as I say, the basing is just MDF squares, 15 by 15. I'll show you these as well. So these are the blinds that I use. So again, these are the blinds that I use for my platoon forward games. Exactly the same basis, 15 by 15 MDF. I've just printed out the letters onto some glossy paper and stuck them down with a bit of PVA. Now then, on to the terrain. I'll add one more thing as well. You can see here I label the rear of the bases. So this here is 3rd platoon. The number with the red dot means this is the anti-tank squad. So this squad here, or section in the British Army, this has the Piat launcher. It's an example of a platoon leader. So you see here, this is the 1st company 3rd platoon leader, and then we have an example here of a company commander. So he's 1st company commander. So that's how I label my bases. Currently I only have 1 company for the Brits and 1 for the Germans, but I can add to them. So next up is terrain. So terrain is nice and easy, and one thing about Crossfire is you need a lot of it. So if you've seen my other videos, you'll notice that I've got these kind of fields I've got ploughed versions of the fields, I've got some rough ground, and forests, which are, or areas of woodland, which I do like that. So these are really simple. So this here, I don't know what it's called, but it's like a foam. So this is foam that I just bought in Hobbycraft, which is a UK like hobby shop. They do all sorts of different things in there. So this is like a foam with this kind of weird toweling on one side of it. It was fairly cheap. You get it in sheets like the same size as a sheet of paper, A4. And I bought this, cut it up. It comes in all various different colours. I obviously chose this kind of yellow colour. And then I've used clump foliage, such as that you can buy from Woodland Scenics, to glue hedgerows around the edge. And to do that, I just use PVA. Some people use hot glue. Hot glue sticks very well, but I've played multiple games with these now, and this isn't coming off. Obviously, be careful, don't start picking at it. But yeah, just normal PVA glue. Run a bead of that round, place them in. You see I've got two different colours, so Woodland Scenics sell a few different shades of that clump foliage. And yeah, so this stuff is really good. So I'm not sure, as I say, I don't know what it's called, but if you typed in on Google like foam with texture or something like that, then this is what you're looking for. And that is exactly what this is as well. So this is also foam that I bought in Hobbycraft, and they do it in all different colours. I obviously chose brown, and then I just gave it a light dry brush with a kind of a tan colour, and it gives you that effect of a ploughed field. So I thought this was really good as well. So for autumn or winter games, ploughed field, very easy to make, very cheap. This here is a wooden base. I don't know the size. This is probably a 50mm base, maybe a 40 or a 50mm base. That I had just left over. So I've got various wargaming projects that are in different states of completion, as I'm sure many of you do as well. I had some of these leftover round bases, and I thought, you know, perhaps I could just make some areas of patchy ground that perhaps might not provide much cover, but might bog down tanks and things and create some interesting choke points. So this uses the Vallejo texture paste, which you can buy. So I've just basically covered the whole base in texture paste. That's what this is. Glue down some bits of cork. So I bought a bag of cork bits from Javis Scenics. Glued that down, painted it all, gave it a dry brush, and then I've just applied some static grass around the edge so that it kind of blends into the table when you're playing like that. And then, yeah, I can use this as rough ground. It could provide cover. It all depends on the game you're playing and what you decide it's going to represent. That's the most kind of visually appealing, shall we say, piece of terrain. In terms of it's got more 3D elements, real terrain elements on it. Most of my terrain is felt. So this, very simply, is just some brown felt. You buy it in sheets, very cheap. You cut it up into shapes. Now, for Crossfire, it's best to have lots of smaller pieces of terrain that you can then combine to make larger areas of terrain. So that's why all of my areas of woodland are roughly this size. Because in Crossfire you move from terrain piece to terrain piece, you don't really want one huge template of woodland, because your troops will be able to just zip across that in one move. Whereas if you have clumps of these spaced apart, you still get a nice dense woodland, but it's takes your men a bit longer to get through them. So that's why I have these small areas, but obviously you could cut these into whatever shape you wanted. And then the trees, I bought these on eBay. I just typed in 6mm wargaming trees, and there was a pack of about 50 on there, relatively inexpensive. I don't know who they're manufactured by, but you can go on eBay, type in wargaming trees 6mm, and this kind of thing will come up. And yeah, they seem to work fairly well with the men. Perhaps the trunks are a bit thick maybe, but then again, I'm not making dioramas here, so that is that. And then roads and rivers. So again, felt. I love using felt for terrain. Brown felt, cut it into strips. There's a nice dirt track, and then grey felt for waterways and streams and things like that as well. So yeah, very simple, really. Nice felt terrain, nice and cheap. And then just to give you some tips and things, if you did want to start doing 6mm Crossfire, because Crossfire is a great game. You don't hear about it much, but it does have quite a big following, and it is very popular. Apparently it's a love-hate thing. People either really dislike it or really like it, but I don't know if that's necessarily the case. As far as I know, most people that have tried it seem to enjoy it. So yeah, I would recommend 6mm as a scale to get into, because it's cheap. You can build an army for not very much money at all. All you need for Crossfire, if I just move these out of the way, all you need for Crossfire is 12 bases, well, 13 bases of infantry. I've put 3 figures to a base for the squads and 1 to a base for a platoon leader, and then my company commander is 2 figures as well. So this is all you need. So if you're doing this in 6mm, that is really nice and easy to get into. Very simple to paint. Everything's cheap. You know, the bases are cheap if you don't want to make your own. The miniatures are cheap. Painting is easy. You don't need a lot of texture materials. You can buy it. So for example, from Heroics and Rods, they sell packs of like weapons teams as well. And you'll get, I think it's about 50 troops. So you'll get plenty of troops to make up MG teams, mortar teams. So you can add to your force very sort of cheaply. And then using felt terrain, you can have a complete setup for not very much money at all. So you know, if you don't do World War II gaming, or you're looking at getting into 6mm, then I definitely recommend trying out Crossfire, just because the fact that Crossfire doesn't require you to use measuring tapes or anything. You don't have any of that kind of fiddly nature that you would sometimes get playing a game with 6mm figures based on such small bases. Sometimes it can get a bit fiddly if you're trying to measure, you know, centimeters and things, and oh, you know, oh, I accidentally knocked that figure, is he in the right place? You don't have any of that with Crossfire. You just pick them up and move them between terrain pieces. So it works really well with 6mm. You know, and again with the vehicles, they're easy to paint, put them down. You know, because it's 6mm, it suits larger battles more, so you can have more vehicles. And even just on a 2 foot by 2 foot area, you've got so much space, you know, to deploy. You can have platoons of tanks, companies of infantry on the table, and yeah, it makes for some good fun. So yeah, hopefully that has answered some of the questions that I've had about the miniatures that I use and how I do my terrain. In terms of what I am working on next, I have a whole host of various vehicles. So again, these are all from Heroics and Roz. So we've got a King Tiger here. We have a Ferdinand, a Tiger 1, and then I've got a Jagd Panther, a Jagd Tiger, a normal Panther. So these are all the German vehicles that I'm currently working on. And I've got 4 more Tigers on the way, so I can have a Tiger platoon. And then in terms of British armour, I have Sherman Firefly, Churchill, my favourite tank. And then I've got a couple of these Universal Carriers as well. And then I also have the painted Shermans that I showed you earlier on. So, you know, if you're doing this in 28mm, to what, that's over £100 worth of stuff there. If you were doing 28mm, these were, I think, 50p each, something like that. So yeah, you can really kind of experiment and buy the vehicles that you find the most interesting. You might not use them every game, but then when you're only paying pence for your vehicles, it doesn't matter too much. There's no you don't feel any pressure to get them out on the table as much as you can, because the amount of money you spent on them. So yeah, hopefully this has been interesting. If you've got any more questions, then yeah, post them below in the comments. I always read comments. I really like it when you guys comment and have questions for me. Keeps things interesting. So yeah, thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.